Welcome back to another episode of English Broadcast Studio, where we bring you the best tips and tricks to improve your English. I'm your host, Alex, and today we have something that will definitely help you sound more fluent and confident when speaking English. We're going to talk about common English grammar mistakes that a lot of people make. Whether you are a beginner or an advanced learner, these are mistakes you definitely want to avoid.
That's right, Alex. So often we think we're speaking English correctly, but there are little grammatical errors that can sneak into our conversations. And these mistakes can make us sound less fluent than we really are. Today, we'll go over some of the most common grammar mistakes and show you how to avoid them so you can sound like a pro.
Exactly, Jamie. And we'll break it down into easy-to-understand examples, so don't worry if you've made these mistakes before. It's all part of the learning process, and we're here to help you improve. Let's start with something that we've all done, mixing up much and many. Jamie, I'm sure you've heard people say things like, "I don't have much books."
Oh, absolutely. And that's a mistake a lot of English learners make. The rule is simple. We use many for countable nouns like books, apples, or people, and we use much for uncountable nouns like water, sugar, or time. So the correct sentence would be, I don't have many books, not much books.
Exactly, Jamie. That's a great example. Now, let's move on to another common mistake, using less instead of fewer. This one trips up a lot of people, especially when it comes to things like shopping or counting items. For example, some people say, I have less apples than you.
Right, Alex. It's a mistake we hear quite often. And here's the rule to remember. Use fewer for countable nouns and less for uncountable nouns. So instead of saying, I have less apples, you should say, I have fewer apples. It's just about keeping track of whether the noun is countable or not. Easy, right?
Definitely. Another mistake that is quite common is using since and for incorrectly. These two words are used to talk about time, but they're used differently. Since refers to a specific point in time, like since Monday or since 2005, while for is used for a duration of time, like for 2 hours or for a week.
Exactly. So instead of saying, I have lived here for 2010, you should say, I have lived here since 2010. And if you want to use for, it would be something like, I've lived here for 10 years. This is a small difference, but it's one that can really change the meaning of what you're saying.
Now, let's talk about one that many learners struggle with, the difference between much and many. This one often gets confused in questions like, how many time do we have left, or how much people are coming? Jamie, could you explain this one for our listeners?
Of course. This one is a little tricky because much and many both relate to quantity, but much is used with uncountable nouns like time, money, or water, while many is used with countable nouns like people, books, or chairs. So the correct sentence would be, how much time do we have left and how many people are coming?
Great explanation, Jamie. This next mistake is one that makes even native speakers hesitate sometimes, using there is and there are correctly. We often see sentences like, there's many people at the party, but that's actually not the correct way to use them, right?
That's right. The rule here is that there is should be used with singular nouns or uncountable nouns, and there are is used with plural nouns. So the correct way to say that would be, there are many people at the party. And if you're talking about something uncountable, like there's water, that would be fine. It's a subtle mistake, but getting it right can make your English sound much smoother.
Thanks for explaining that, Jamie. Now, let's talk about something that many learners mix up, especially when they're talking about things they did in the past. I'm talking about the use of been and gone. These two words are often confused, and I've heard people say, I've gone to the store already, but that's actually not the correct way to use them, right?
Exactly, Alex. The difference between been and gone is pretty important. When you say, I have been to the store, it means that you went to the store and have now returned. So you've visited the store in the past and are back. But if you say, I have gone to the store, it means you went to the store and haven't returned yet. It's a subtle difference, but it's really important for clarity.
That's a great example, Jamie. Now, moving on to something that many people get wrong, especially when speaking quickly, mixing up who and whom. I know it can sound a bit formal, but using the right one will make you sound more polished. Could you explain the difference for our listeners?
Sure. This one trips up a lot of people, but once you understand the rule, it's easy to use correctly. Who is used as the subject of a sentence or clause, and whom is used as the object of a verb or preposition. So, for example, who is going to the party is correct because who is the subject of the sentence. But if you say, whom did you invite, that's correct because whom is the object of the verb invite.
So, in simpler terms, if you can replace who or whom with he, she, or him, her, that's a good way to tell which one to use. If you can use he or she, then who is the right choice. If you can use him or her, then you should use whom.
Exactly. And while whom might sound a bit formal or old-fashioned, it's still good to know when to use it properly, especially if you're writing formal emails or doing business communication. Let's move on to another mistake that's pretty common, using a lot and lots incorrectly. A lot of people think they can just throw them around interchangeably, but there's a slight difference.
That's true. Both a lot and lots mean a large amount, but a lot is more commonly used in informal speech, and it can be used with both countable and uncountable nouns. For example, I have a lot of homework, or I have a lot of books. On the other hand, lots is a bit more casual, and while you can use it in the same way, you might want to avoid it in formal writing.
Exactly. And another thing to keep in mind is that lots of is used in informal speech, while a lot of can be used both formally and informally. So instead of saying, I have lots of work to do, you could say, I have a lot of work to do if you want to sound a bit more neutral or formal.
Great point, Jamie. Now let's talk about a mistake that many learners make when it comes to this and these. Sometimes people say things like, "This are my books," but that's not quite right, is it?
No, it's not. When you're talking about one thing, you use this, and when you're talking about more than one thing, you use these. So the correct sentence would be, these are my books, because books is plural. If you're talking about one book, you would say, this is my book.
That's a simple one, but it can make a big difference in sounding correct. Another thing people often get wrong is using good and well in the wrong context. People sometimes say, I play tennis good, but the right word here is well, isn't it?
Absolutely. Good is an adjective and well is an adverb. We use good to describe nouns like good food or good music, and we use well to describe how an action is performed. So the correct way to say it would be, I play tennis well, because well is describing how you play tennis, the action.
Exactly, Jamie. And here's a mistake that's especially common with questions. People often mix up the word order in sentences like, where you are from. This is something we need to keep in mind when forming questions, right, Jamie?
Yes, definitely. In English, the general rule is that when asking questions, we need to invert the subject and the auxiliary verb. So the correct sentence would be, where are you from? The word order should be question word plus auxiliary verb plus subject plus main verb. So it's not where you are from, but where are you from?
Great explanation, Jamie. Now, let's move on to something that often confuses English learners when it comes to talking about the past, using did for regular verbs in the past tense. Some people say, I didn't went to the store, which is a common mistake. Can you explain why that's incorrect?
Sure. This is one that a lot of people make, even native speakers. The rule here is that when you use did as the auxiliary verb in the past tense, the main verb should always be in its base form, not its past tense. So instead of saying, I didn't went to the store, the correct sentence would be, I didn't go to the store.
Right, so we only need to use did for past tense questions or negatives. For example, did you see that movie? Or I didn't like the food. But we don't need to change the main verb after did.
Exactly. Now let's talk about a common mistake with make and do. These two verbs are often used interchangeably, but there's actually a difference. For instance, people might say, I made my homework, but the correct expression is, I did my homework.
Yes, that's a great example. The difference is subtle, but it's important to know when to use each one. We use do for general activities or tasks, like do homework, do the dishes, or do exercise. On the other hand, make is used for creating or constructing something, like make a cake, make a plan, or make a decision.
Exactly. So when you're talking about tasks or actions that don't involve creating something, you'll use do.
But when you're talking about creating or producing something, make is the correct verb. It's one of those small differences that can make a big impact on how natural your English sounds.
Now, here's something that many learners get confused when speaking about future actions, using will and going to. For example, people might say, I will going to the party tomorrow, but that's incorrect, right?
Yes, that's another one. The difference between will and going to can be tricky, but here's the rule. Use will for spontaneous decisions, promises, or offers, like, I will help you with that, or I'll call you later. On the other hand, use going to when you've already planned something or when something is about to happen. For example, I'm going to the party tomorrow because you've already made plans. So the correct sentence would be, I'm going to the party tomorrow, not I will going to.
Perfect explanation, Jamie. Now, let's talk about the difference between some and any. These two words confuse a lot of learners. For example, someone might say, I don't have some money, but it should be, I don't have any money. Could you explain that?
Absolutely. The key difference is in the positive and negative sentences. We use some in affirmative sentences or in offers and requests, like, I have some money. Would you like some coffee? But when you make a negative sentence, you use any. So instead of I don't have some money, the correct sentence is I don't have any money. The same goes for questions. Do you have any money? But not do you have some money unless you're offering something.
Great. And here's another tricky one that I know a lot of people struggle with, using each and every. They both refer to individual items in a group, but they're used in slightly different contexts. For example, you might hear someone say, each student must bring their own pencil, but it's actually better to say every student must bring their own pencil.
Right. The difference is subtle, but here's the basic rule. Each refers to individual items or people in a group, and it's used when you're emphasizing the individual. For example, each of the students was given a book. Every, on the other hand, is used when you're talking about all the members of a group in general. So you'd say, every student must bring their own pencil. It's more about the emphasis. Each is more individual, while every refers to the whole group as a collective.
That's a great point, Jamie. It's important to get these small differences right. Now, let's talk about one more mistake that often gets overlooked, using a and an correctly. A lot of learners mix these up, like saying an university instead of a university. Can you explain why?
Sure. The rule here is all about the sound that comes after the article. You use a before words that begin with a consonant sound, like a cat, a book, or a university. Even though university starts with a vowel letter, it's pronounced with a U sound, which is a consonant sound. So you say a university. But if the word begins with a vowel sound, like apple, you use an. So it's an apple, not a apple.
Great clarification. It's all about the sound, not the letter. Now, to wrap things up, let's briefly go over a couple of quick tips that can help anyone avoid grammar mistakes in general.
Sure, Alex. First, remember to practice regularly. The more you use English in daily conversation, the more natural it will become. Pay attention to small details like word order and subject-verb agreement. And don't be afraid to ask for feedback from native speakers. They can help you catch those small mistakes you might not notice.
Exactly. Another tip is to watch movies or listen to podcasts in English. This will help you get a feel for how native speakers use grammar in real-life situations. And finally, keep practicing speaking and writing. The more you practice, the fewer mistakes you'll make. Thank you, Jamie, for all those helpful explanations. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the differences between much and many to the proper use of who and whom. I'm sure our listeners are feeling more confident in their English grammar now.
Absolutely, Alex. These common mistakes are simple to fix once you understand the rules. And with a little practice, you'll sound much more fluent and natural. It's all about being mindful of the small details, like subject-verb agreement or choosing the correct article.
Exactly. And just remember, everyone makes mistakes. Grammar is something that improves over time with regular practice. The key is not to get discouraged, but to keep learning and refining your skills. We all start somewhere, and the more you practice, the better you'll get.
That's right. And don't forget, there's no such thing as perfection in language learning. The goal is communication and confidence, so don't be afraid to speak and make mistakes. It's all part of the process.
And with that, we've reached the end of today's episode. We hope you found these tips on common grammar mistakes helpful and that they'll make a difference in your English. If you have any questions or would like us to dive deeper into any specific grammar rules, feel free to leave us a comment or send us a message.
We'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to English Broadcast Studio for more useful English tips. We've got plenty of content coming your way to help you improve your language skills.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time with more tips to boost your English. Until then, keep practicing and don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Take care and happy learning.